A former warden and a former inmate tell us death is easier than life at the federal Supermax.
It was not designed with humanity in mind.
The feds were saying that these escapees were leaving the prison just to collect things like cell phones, cigarettes, and things like liquor and beer just to sell to other inmates. Inmates have been using this now covered up hole in the fence to escape the U.S. penitentiary and smuggle in contraband to sell to other inmates. The details of
top story this afternoon. A former mob boss was found dead earlier this morning at USP Hazelton in Preston County.
We've all heard of people trying to sneak contraband behind bars, but the feds say smugglers have gotten smart and they've turned to drones to do the dirty work. Today, for the first time, prosecutors spelled out their case against a Houston man who's facing federal charges. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jordan Williams. U.S. Attorney Britt Featherston says Davian Turner tried to drop drugs and other items into the Beaumont Federal Prison Complex back on May 19th.
The United States operates two main types of prison systems, federal and state. Simply put, state prisons hold people who break state laws, like robbery or assault, while federal prisons are for people who break federal laws, such as drug trafficking across state lines, large-scale fraud, or terrorism. Federal prisons are run by the Federal Bureau of Prisons and often hold inmates convicted of serious, high-profile crimes. Among these federal facilities, some stand out for their extreme violence, tight security, or notorious inmates. This overview explores several of the most dangerous high-security and Supermax federal prisons in the country, from the infamous ADX Florence to troubled institutions like FCI Beaumont and USP Hazelton, shedding light on the violence, gang activity, and sometimes shocking conditions behind the walls of these prisons.
It is as isolated as the prisoners who call it home. The prison, called ADX Florence, is a tomb for the living.
To me, it's life after death.
Bob Hood was warden at this Supermax prison. He spoke exclusively to the I-Team in detail about a prisoner's sparse existence here, 2 hours south of Denver. A prisoner lives in a cell the size of a bathroom. It has a shower, a toilet, a concrete slab covered with a thin mattress. In the rare time outside, prisoners are kept in cages. One 15-minute phone call per month.
Including notorious criminals like the World Trade Center bomber, the shoe bomber, the Unabomber, the Olympic Park bomber, the Boston Marathon bomber, and this longtime Soviet spy. And now drug kingpin El Chapo, who escaped twice from Mexican prisons, but is unlikely to repeat that feat here at this ultra-secure facility.
We have new information out of the U.S. Penitentiary in Florence. An inmate died early Monday morning, according to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. 43-year-old Theodore Clifton Matthews was found unresponsive and pronounced dead at the high-security facility.
ADX Florence is the most secure federal prison in the United States, often referred to as a Supermax facility. Located in Florence, Colorado, it currently houses approximately 335 male inmates, all considered among the most dangerous in the federal system. Inmates at ADX include high-profile terrorists and high-profile inmates, such as Boston Marathon bomber Jokart Sarnath, Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, and Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh. One notorious corridor, known as Bombers Row, has housed several of these individuals. Conditions at ADX are extremely restrictive, with prisoners confined in solitary confinement for nearly 23 hours a day in windowless cells. Though violence between inmates is rare due to the high degree of isolation and tight security, which includes 1,400 remote control doors, razor wire, and constant surveillance, rare incidents still occur. For instance, in 2020, inmate Ishmael Petty fatally stabbed his cellmate and was later indicted for deletion. No one has ever escaped ADX, a fact that supports its reputation as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Officials defend the strict environment, claiming it is necessary to manage extremely violent and escape-prone inmates.
Says Jefferson County law enforcement was called to the Beaumont Federal Prison May 19th after someone spotted a drone. He says law enforcement found Davian Turner nearby, and then they found several bags near the drone.
Turner is alleged to have operated a large drone and attempted to deliver phones, vape pens, tobacco, phone chargers, and other items into the Federal Bureau of Prisons here in Jefferson County.
For you, a federal grand jury has indicted 7 MS-13 gang members and charged them with double murder. They're accused of attacking rival gang members at the prison in Beaumont. That attack left 2 inmates dead and led to a nationwide lockdown of the federal prison system. According to the indictment, Andrew Pineda was stabbed 45 times. The second inmate who died, Guillermo Riojas, was also stabbed multiple times in his heart and lung. Now, 2 other inmates who were a part of the Serenos gang were injured in the attack, but they survived.
Nearly 6 months, but U.S. Marshals say they have found an inmate who escaped from the Beaumont Federal Prison. Salvador Garcia Jr. arrested in Mexico and transferred to U.S. custody over the weekend at the Hidalgo International Bridge south of McAllen.
In case you missed it, an Al-Qaeda-trained jihadist who recruited for ISIS while in the Beaumont Federal Prison was sentenced today to 25 years behind bars. Mohammed Ibrahim Ahmed, convicted for continuing to provide support to terrorist organizations and also for making a false statement to FBI agents in
news
December.
tonight, a federal inmate is recovering in the hospital after getting into a fight with another inmate. That fight broke out at the federal prison in Beaumont around 8:40 this morning. Prison staff eventually stopped the fighting and secured the area, according to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons. The other inmate involved was not seriously hurt.
In Beaumont, officials say cars often drop off drugs, cell phones, and other contraband in the woods for inmates to sneak away and grab.
USP Beaumont is a high-security federal prison within the Beaumont Correctional Complex in Texas, housing around 1,372 male inmates. It has become infamous for extreme violence and entrenched gang warfare, including a deadly January 2022 brawl involving MS-13 and Serenos gang members, which resulted in 2 inmate deaths and prompted a rare nationwide lockdown of all federal prisons. Incidents of violence at Beaumont are not isolated. In 2008, 2 handcuffed inmates killed another prisoner and attacked 2 guards, and a string of deletions in the late 2000s further cemented the prison's violent reputation. Gang activity is rampant, with MS-13, Dead Man Inc., and other factions maintaining strongholds. Security lapses are a recurring problem, with escapes and chronic staffing shortages frequently reported. One local police source even joked about an open-door policy, alluding to inadequately monitored fences and cameras. After the 2022 deletions, federal prosecutors emphasized that MS-13 members remain violent and lethal even behind bars. As a result of these systemic issues, Beaumont has become a focus of national scrutiny and reform efforts.
26-year-old Artavius Burnett was an inmate in the Federal Corrections Institute Pollock, a medium-security federal prison in Grant Parish. On February 18th, Burnett was found unresponsive and later pronounced dead by EMS after life-saving measures. However, the Burnett family said they did not learn of Artavius' death from the prison. They found out through the news. But despite the family's claims and a message to KALB, the Federal Bureau of Prisons say FCI Pollock did in fact notify the next of kin.
Located in central Louisiana, this prison is a high-security federal penitentiary known for housing extremely dangerous individuals. According to federal prosecutors, the prison is home to some of the most dangerous individuals in the nation, many with gang affiliations. Violent incidents are frequent. In 2019, inmate Demetri Goldsmith brutally attacked 2 corrections officers with a shank, an act that earned him an additional 18-year sentence. This and similar assault in the facility's perilous environment. Though there have been no major recent escapes or riots, inmate on inmate and inmate on staff assaults remain serious
and later
issues,
pronounced dead by
with
EMS
authorities continuing to monitor and prosecute gang violence aggressively.
Our top story this afternoon, a former mob boss was found dead earlier this morning at USP Hazelton in Preston County. Federal prison officials have confirmed that 89-year-old James Whitey Bulger, who had just been moved to Hazelton yesterday, appears to have been killed shortly before 8:30 this morning. Bulger was the leader of the Winter Hill Gang in Boston from 1978 to 1995. And according to officials, Bulger was serving 2 life sentences.
The Hazelton inmate has been sentenced for a fellow inmate with a handmade weapon. The U.S. Department of Justice says that Stephen Crawford will serve 15 more years in prison for that crime.
After a whistleblower alleges that inmates are being beaten and assaulted and that the wrong inmates are being released. The whistleblower also alleges that staff are covering up a group of inmates escaping from the prison camp, have used racial slurs against minority inmates, and have urinated on prisoners' property and shredded their mail.
USP Hazelton, part of the FCI Hazelton complex in West Virginia, has earned a reputation as one of the most dangerous federal prisons in America. Often referred to as Misery Mountain, the prison is plagued by violence, gang activity, and chronic staffing shortages. In early 2024, 2 inmates died in one weekend during a surge of stabbings, with additional assaults occurring earlier that week. Similar violent incidents have persisted for years. Gang presence, including groups like MS-13 and Dead Man Inc., contributes to the instability. Allegations of staff misconduct and systemic abuse have further tarnished Hazelton's image. Senator Shelley Moore Capito has called for federal investigations into disturbing whistleblower reports alleging falsified security records, abuse, and cover-ups of inmate mistreatment. The Bureau of Prisons has acknowledged a dire staffing crisis, with 70-80 correctional officer positions unfilled as of March 2024. Despite being on lockdown, the violence and dysfunction continue to draw national concern.
Thank you. Channel 2 investigates possible prison corruption here in Atlanta. Today, whistleblowers testified on Capitol Hill about major security and safety problems at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary.
Some of the testimony here today, you just cannot imagine what staff here were thinking, leaving the doors to the prisons open, hoping stray cats would come in and deal with their rat problem, intentionally damaging the drug screening equipment. The news has reported on safety lapses here at the penitentiary in Southeast Atlanta for years, from inmates coming and going as they please through holes in fences, to these pictures of parties with contraband booze and drugs, even a Facebook Live on a contraband cell phone from inside a prison cell.
Agencies trying to figure out how inmates at this federal prison escaped and then returned without being noticed. Investigators say the prisoners would break out just to bring contraband back in.
Inmates were allegedly escaping from the prison grounds, but returning with duffel bags full of liquor, cigarettes, and even objects that could be used as potential weapons. The documents also state that the inmates would jump into cars already waiting for them in Newtown Circle.
USP Atlanta is a high-security federal prison with a storied history, including previously housing 9/11 conspirator Zacarias Moussaoui. Although not as violent as other facilities, USP Atlanta has experienced serious incidents, such as the 2021 assault on a corrections officer by a gang leader from the Ghostface Gangsters. The perpetrator was sentenced in 2024. While gang activity is present, including MS-13 members and regional factions, the prison has not seen a major riot or escape in the past decade. FBI and BOP officials have emphasized a zero-tolerance policy toward violence against staff, underscoring the prison's ongoing efforts to maintain control and discipline. Despite these efforts, violence does occur sporadically, and prison officials continue to monitor gang activity and inmate behavior closely.
The Department of Justice is now looking into the situation at USP Thompson after an NPR and Marshall Project report found it to be one of the deadliest federal prisons in the country. Since 2019, there have been 5 suspected and 2 alleged at Thompson. There have also been allegations of serious abuses by staff members, including tying prisoners up with shackles.
Federal grand jury indicted a corrections officer at FCI Thompson on charges he engaged in sexual activity with 2 inmates. Those charges filed against 40-year-old Danny Spiker. He's been on administrative leave since June. The indictment accuses him of 4 counts of engaging in sexual acts while working at the prison. It claims Spiker was on the job as a cook supervisor.
The union at the United States Penitentiary in Thompson is calling for the immediate removal of Warden Thomas Bergami. The union says the warden has placed staff, inmates, and communities at risk.
The letter reads, quote, Thomas Bergami allowed and encouraged subordinate leaders under his command to commit whistleblower retaliation and commit safety infractions. It goes on to accuse other managers of violating laws and claims more than 60 staff members have left since Bergami became warden just over 3 months ago. All of this comes as lawmakers have called for a federal investigation into the prison.
About her son and the fight to learn more about his death. Victor Gutierrez was an inmate who died at the prison about a week and a half ago. Now, Teresa Raymond says she wasn't notified about her son's death until the day after a hospital in Clinton, Iowa pronounced him dead. The prison, she says, gave her conflicting information about when he died, and she hasn't been able to identify her son's body.
USP Thompson has gained notoriety not for inmate violence, but for extreme staff abuse within its special management unit. Investigative reports from NPR and the Marshall Project in 2023 revealed horrifying conditions. Over 120 former inmates detailed brutal beatings, racial slurs, and denial of medical care while restrained. 5 inmates reportedly died under suspicious circumstances in the SMU. These revelations led the Bureau of Prisons to close the unit abruptly in February 2023. Though the prison houses dangerous inmates, including gang members and terrorists, the central controversy at Thompson involves staff on inmate violence rather than traditional prison violence. Lawmakers, including Senator Dick Durbin, have called for investigations, while BOP leadership promised accountability and cultural reform. Correctional unions, however, argue that staffing shortages contribute to the instability. Overall, USP Thompson remains under scrutiny due to a systemic pattern of abuse and institutional failures in oversight.
The Department of Justice launched a massive investigation to see what kind of criminal activities might be happening behind the walls and barbed wire. According to the Department of Justice, one corrections officer was allegedly having sex with an inmate for over a year. She, the corrections officer, even offered to send the inmate's family money, all recorded in a phone call. Inmate arrest includes one accused of strangling his cellmate to death using a torn bedsheet. Another allegedly stabbing his cellmate using a 6.5-inch bladed weapon.
Larry Nassar, the former doctor for USA Gymnastics, convicted of sexual abuse, is recovering tonight. That's after being stabbed several times in a prison in Sumter County.
He didn't seem surprised by news that Larry Nassar, the doctor convicted of sexually abusing gymnasts, including Olympic athletes, had been stabbed in prison.
In a prison, anything can happen at any time.
USP Coleman is a high-security federal prison within a larger correctional complex in Sumterville, Florida. In July 2023, it drew national headlines after inmate Larry Nassar, the former Team USA doctor convicted of sexual abuse, was stabbed multiple times by another prisoner. Nassar suffered serious injuries, including a collapsed lung, but survived after emergency medical intervention. The incident exposed severe staffing shortages. At the time, 145 officer positions were vacant across the complex, including 44 on the night of the attack. Though Coleman has experienced occasional fights and assaults, the Nassar stabbing marked its most serious recent incident. The prison has taken steps to tighten security and fill staffing gaps in response. Most inmates are long-term violent or sex offenders, and management typically assigns vulnerable prisoners to special units to reduce risk. Despite the attention from the Nassar attack, Coleman is not widely known for systemic violence or escape attempts compared to other high-security facilities. USP Big Sandy, located near Inez, Kentucky, is a high-security federal prison known for its violent environment and mountainous terrain. Since opening in 2003, Big Sandy has been the site of multiple inmate deletions and stabbings. One notable incident in 2018 involved 2 members of the Mexicanemi, Texas Mexican Mafia gang who nearly deleted a rival inmate in the prison gym. Big Sandy houses a significant number of inmates from Washington, D.C., many affiliated with gangs like the Bloods, Crips, and Latin Kings, which has led to persistent racial and gang tensions. Despite its security level, Big Sandy continues to report violent assaults, although there have been no major escapes in recent years. In 2023, a former lieutenant was convicted of violating inmates' civil rights by beating them, a reflection of the prison's long-standing issues with staff conduct and internal violence. Federal prisons are designed to house some of the most dangerous and difficult individuals in the U.S. justice system. Issues such as staff shortages, inmate abuse, and chronic security lapses continue to plague several institutions, raising serious questions about safety, oversight, and reform. Whether dealing with notorious criminals or systemic breakdowns, these prisons highlight the deep challenges facing the federal prison system today.